I'm Charity Nebbe, and this is Greetings from Iowa. While it may not seem like it at first, Iowa is full of surprises when it comes to the homes, buildings, and architecture. For example, the last surviving hotel designed by the legendary architect Frank Lloyd Wright sits right here in Iowa. The Capitol building with its gold-covered dome is the largest gilded dome in the United States. And there are countless homes with unique stories that are waiting to be uncovered. On this episode, we'll take a tour of an architectural treasure in Mason City. We'll learn how the Sears Roebuck catalog played an important role in home construction in the early 20th century. And we'll explore the origin and history of a rivalry between two football teams that is tied to a pig from Fort Dodge. All that and more coming up next on Greetings from Iowa.
Funding for Greetings from Iowa is provided by...
With our Iowa roots and Midwestern values, Farmers Mutual Hail is committed to offering innovative farm insurance for America's farmers, just as we have for 6 generations. Farmers Mutual Hail, America's crop insurance company.
The Pella Roll Screen Foundation is a proud supporter of Iowa PBS. Pella Windows and Doors strives to better our communities and build a better tomorrow.
Iowa is sometimes called the land between two rivers because of the two largest waterways making up the east and west borders of our state. Rivers, however, are a bit unpredictable as to which path they choose to follow, and every once in a while this can cause confusion among neighbors. This is Iowa, and this is Nebraska. And separating these two states is the Missouri River, a perfect natural boundary. Everything on the eastern side is Iowa, and everything on the western side is Nebraska. Simple, clear, and easy to understand. This, however, is Carter Lake, Iowa. A piece of land that is a little over 2 square miles, sitting snugly in Omaha, Nebraska. As borders were drawn during the founding of Iowa, this small community wasn't an oversight or a mistake. On the contrary, Carter Lake has a colorful, confusing history that involves floods, legal battles, and secession. The Missouri River is no stranger to periodic flooding. As the waters rise, they sometimes slightly alter the course of the river, following a new or different channel. In 1877, a major flood occurred during an ice jam along what was then called Saratoga Bend between Council Bluffs and Omaha. The flood caused the Missouri River to change course, and when the waters receded, a crescent-shaped body of water called a cutoff lake was all that remained of the river's previous channel. Immediately after the flood, a legal battle broke out between Nebraska and Iowa. Nebraska claimed the cutoff lake and the surrounding area as its land since it sat on the Omaha side of the river. Iowa disagreed. Soon after the formation of the lake, the site became a flourishing recreational area. The destination was popular for boating, fishing, picnics, and swimming. Later, developers would build an amusement park with a merry-go-round and one of the earliest roller coasters in the Midwest. Council Bluffs officials, however, saw Omaha's intrusion as a bold attempt to steal land that rightfully belonged to them. The ensuing legal battle over whether Iowa or Nebraska had jurisdiction over Cutoff Island eventually went to the nation's highest court. the Supreme Court sided with Iowa on the basis that state lines remain the same when a river avulses or dramatically alters its path, as it did in 1877. So the land never left Iowa, despite its position on the Nebraska side of the river. In the early 20th century, the area continued to flourish as a recreational hotspot. Although Carter Lake was legally considered part of Council Bluffs, residents paid city taxes but lacked many of the city utilities. Eventually, residents were fed up. The community successfully seceded from Council Bluffs in the 1920s, intending to become part of Omaha, Nebraska, but Omaha wouldn't provide the services the area needed. Finally, in 1930, by a vote of 171 to 124, residents approved Carter Lake's incorporation as a municipality in the state of Iowa, giving birth to the geographical oddity of a lone Iowa city accessible only by Nebraska roads. Carter Lake's unique position on Nebraska's side of the river has created its fair share of confusion and legal issues. It has one of the shortest highways in the state, Iowa Highway 165. As you leave Epley Airfield in Omaha, you immediately enter and then leave the state of Iowa. Despite the abnormality, Carter Lake stands as its own thing, a land locked in Omaha that is a unique Iowa community.
Well, as you can imagine, this house was something really different for Mason City in 1908. Some of the features that are really important to Frank Lloyd Wright's version of the Prairie School: the bands of windows, contiguous windows together, the edge of the roof line that makes a broad horizontal statement. Also, you have this thick and thin trim. Instead of stopping at the edge of the wall, bleeds off to the sides, which again emphasizes that horizontal effect. Your eyes don't stop at the edge, it bleeds off and directs your eyes out. All those things make it so when you come around the corner and see the house, there's no question this is a Prairie School home. As you come up into the house, you can see that you get a vista not only of the living room area, but through the veranda and a large window, so it makes it a very open feeling house. And throughout the house, you'll see symmetry as something that's a theme in the design. Along with the symmetry, the trim in the house reflects that concept of horizontality. So we have this very wide trim along the walls and just down from the ceiling that is uniform throughout the house in all the rooms. The group that put the furniture in the house tried to imitate the design features of the furniture as well as keeping the house as it was. Some of the other things on the wall here are an article from the New York Times talking about the moving of the house and saving of it, and I like the headline, Averting a Right Wrong. I hope you enjoy it and enjoy your time in Mason City.
These days, we are so used to ordering everything we could ever want online with a few clicks of a button. But not so long ago, people browsed actual catalogs made from real paper for all kinds of things: toys and kitchen gadgets and clothes. Of course, the Sears catalog is the most famous catalog of all. But it offered so much more. In a Sears catalog, you could even browse through and order through the mail a home. Sears no longer prints catalogs, and not surprisingly, they no longer manufacture kit houses. But from 1908 to 1940, they sold about 75,000 mail-order houses. There were more than 350 styles of homes. The homes ranged from $360 to about $3,000, which in today's terms is about $10,000 up to $80,000. So they were marketing these homes really to middle-class Americans. When customers ordered their houses through the mail, the shipment would come usually on the rail. So a boxcar would arrive with an average of 30,000 parts and 25 tons, an average. So it was up to the customer to figure out how to get it from the train station to the plot of land where they wanted to actually build the house. 100 years ago, when these houses were really popular, you couldn't just go and watch a how-to video on YouTube. You had to figure out, you either had to find an expert who knew how to do it, a local carpenter or somebody really handy, or you had to follow along the instructions printed step by step for 75 pages to make sure that you're building your house right. It's hard to pinpoint exactly how many are in Iowa because they're often hard to recognize unless you're inside the house. So we don't know, but it's likely that there are hundreds, including Corning and Solon, Fort Madison. I know there's one in Bussey, too. These DIY kit homes, the styles ranged pretty significantly, so they're hard to immediately identify, but you can do it if you're inside. Sometimes the rafters or sheetrock or plumbing elements were stamped with SR for Sears Roebuck. I know some of the bathtubs, there's a little SR in one of the lower corners of the bathtub farthest from the faucet. So if you know the owners well enough to snoop around their bathtub, you can identify it that way. I think it's important to remember that the mail order homes, from Sears at least, started in 1908, which is the same year that the Model T first rolled off the conveyor belt at Ford. So a lot of Americans were purchasing cars. Cars were a new thing, and that allowed families to move a little bit out of the city center. So suburbs started developing. So people had space to build their own homes, and a lot of building materials were first being invented and developed and engineered around the same time. Sheetrock was a big development because people could just install that rather than hiring a plaster expert. So there were lots of ways that things became more automated and more mass-produced, and Americans figured that out really in lots of different ways, both marketers and consumers. Mail-order homes continued through 1940, at least through Sears. And then with World War II, building supplies were in short supply. There was all of the materials were going to the war effort. And then after the war, when soldiers returned to start the baby boom, really, suburbs began developing in a different way, where developers and construction companies built big tracts of land rather than relying on individual families to build their own home. I think today, when so much is accessible with a couple clicks on our iPhone and Amazon delivers whatever you want, toothpaste or cat food or whatever, the idea that your grandparents ordered 30,000 spare parts over the rail lines and built a house that your family may still own, these are very tangible brick and mortar souvenirs of an interesting, innovative time in American history.
My name is Mike Cook. I'm our plant operations manager here at the Independence Mental Health Institute, and then I also take care of the museum. We are currently standing on the 3rd floor of the Reynolds building, which was the first building built here. They started construction on it in 1868. So where we're standing now would have been one of the male wards many, many years ago. The history of the hospital is really pretty fascinating. It's going on 150 years. It's been here a long time. It's always been owned by the state. It's always been, a state mental hospital. We're the second state mental hospital in Iowa. Mount Pleasant was the first. And it's been its purpose. It's gone through several different changes over the years, as far as treatments and that type of thing. But the hospital has always continued, to serve some of the best care that the mentally ill could have. It's always kind of been a catch-all. It houses a lot of the very seriously mentally ill that, that other places are not capable of housing or handling. Up until the 1800s, there really wasn't a hospital to serve the mentally ill. And it was looked upon much differently then than it's looked upon today. A lot of times your relatives would simply lock you in an attic bedroom or a basement room, or you would be dumped off like at a county poor farm or something. But the conditions you lived in were horrible. They were never very good. There wasn't any place you could get any kind of help or any place that you would even be treated with respect or dignity. Dr. Thomas Kirkbride is a very interesting, very fascinating person, and he was able to come up with his design, his Kirkbride architecture. So his view was, you built this huge, big, beautiful building, this big castle almost, out in the middle of the country. Most of them, all of them, were basically built in the country because that gave you the opportunity to have farmland and you could have like crops and animals, but it also gave you the opportunity to have like nature trails and this type of thing. So that was kind of all of his idea was you would take these people who life has not been very kind to or treated very well. And you would put them in this huge big castle and you would treat them with respect and dignity. The museum tells a lot, honestly. One of the most important things I think is the museum really paints a picture of the patients. And everything is from the nearly 150 years the hospital's been here. Being in maintenance, obviously, we're in every little nook and cranny and everywhere, so we're always finding things. A lot of the dressers, a lot of the furniture the patients made, a lot of artwork. A lot of the artwork has been done by the patients. We've always had a real big activities program for the patients from the beginning, and we still do today. And things are set up, each room is kind of set up in its own thing. So kitchen display, all the old kitchen utilities, and at the height of our population, we had over 1,800 patients. So, cooking was quite a chore. Some of the different treatments that were done here, the electric shock treatment, for example, the first electric shock treatment that was used here, that's on display here. We also have 2 trocars that were used during the transorbital lobotomies when that kind of took place through the 1940s and 50s. Medical equipment, from the lab and the pharmacy, and also that was just used in the exam rooms. Big library display. We have a lot of the books that were originally used back in the 1860s and 1870s that were here. So there's a wide range, but it all centers around the hospital and the patients and how it's changed over the nearly 150 years that it's been here. History in general is just extremely important for everybody to know. History always kind of repeats itself, and we need to know our past and our history, and learn from that to try to move forward and learn what worked and what didn't work and what methods were the best and what types of treatments really had the greatest effect and that kind of stuff, because, mental illness isn't going to go away, as same as with any kind of major, illness. And we can learn from that and come up with better treatments and better ways to deal with that to help those people cope and have a more positive, productive life.
Who would have thought the football rivalry between the University of Iowa Hawkeyes and University of Minnesota Golden Gophers would revolve around a pig from Fort Dodge, Iowa? There's now a new work of public art that shares the story.
This is more than just a pig, a traveling trophy between Iowa and Minnesota football. There's a racial element to it. And what a terrific story how 2 governors resolved a racial tension issue with a pig from Fort Dodge.
Good morning, everybody. We gather here today in north central Iowa, the home of Floyd of Rosedale, the most widely recognized trophy in all of college football. So here we are today to officially dedicate the great Floyd memory, the trophy, on the grounds where he was born.
My name is Dave Flattery. I am a banker with Avila Bank here in Fort Dodge.
My name is Randy Kuhlman. I am the CEO of the Fort Dodge Community Foundation here in Fort Dodge.
My name is Jim Kirsten, live here in Fort Dodge with my wife Lori.
I come from a family of 6. 5 of us are Iowa State grads. 3 are actually letter winners at Iowa State. 3 of us played baseball at Iowa State. But my mother was always an Iowa fan. Well, she passed away in 2013. And she'd always tell us that Floyd of Rosedale was from Fort Dodge.
The Rosedale farm was out where Floyd now is located. And so as kids, we used to go out there and, we didn't really understand the significance of Floyd of Rosedale at all.
So in '34, Iowa was visiting Minnesota, and Iowa had a black running back by the name of Ozzie Simmons. At the time, there were very few African Americans playing Division I football, and I believe he was a second-team All-American. Ronald Reagan broadcast that game for WHO, and he thought that Ozzie Simmons was one of the best running backs that he'd ever seen. So they travel up to Minnesota, and they mistreat him, and he came off the field several times injured, and the fans, Iowa fans, were not happy. The Iowa governor wasn't happy, and so there was a lot of tension from 1934 to 35, to the point where they didn't know if they were going to even play the game, from what I understand. And so Minnesota came down to Iowa City, and I believe they stayed in the Quad Cities because there was a lot of tension in Iowa City. So on the eve of the game, the night before, Floyd B. Olson, the governor of Minnesota, wired Clyde B. Herring and said, "Hey, to resolve this difference, let's have a wager." And so they wager a live piece of pork. Whoever lost that game would have to present a live piece of pork to the winning governor. Al Loomis, he had a prize piece of livestock on his farm, which was the Rosedale farm. And so he called the Iowa governor. He says, "Hey, I got this prize piece of livestock. He's the brother to Blue Boy. Blue Boy was in the movie State Fair, the original movie State Fair." And so, sure enough, he was a prize piece of livestock. And so they actually walked it into the State House, the Capitol, and presented a live piece of swine to the winning governor, and that was Floyd B. Olson. And they named him Floyd, of course, after the governor, and then the Rosedale Farms.
3, 2, 1. Cut away, Terry Branstad. All right. Welcome Floyd of Rosedale to his true home, indeed.
What better way to bring recognition to Fort Dodge and to a great story, and the possibility of building a statue that retains the story, the legacy. And so I thought it was a neat idea. I made some calls, and I'm not sure. I know I had nobody said, "Hey, that said that's not a very good idea."
We were really looking for something that represented it well, but couldn't be exactly like it, but also had a real artistic component to it. And ultimately, Dale Merrill, the sculptor and out of Mount Vernon, presented his project to the committee, and it was unanimously supported. And when Dave and we went down there, and when Dale was putting the project together, and we went into his studio, and we were extremely surprised by, number one, the size of it, number two, that it's really made out of 6 layers of steel. So it's really, the artistic design is absolutely amazing. It's quite a structure, but it's also got a real artistic look to it as well.
I think the significance going back to the 30s and resolving a racial issue by a friendly bet between 2 governors was priceless. And I think over the last maybe 10 or 15 or 20 years with leadership in Fort Dodge, public and private, we truly are showing the country how things can get done. And I think this is an example of a variety of people coming together to raise a lot of money privately and for a good cause. So I think it's a real good message to send not only Iowa, but the country, that leaders need to sit down and figure out solutions.
In a sense, this is kind of a legacy to my mom too, is that, you know, all these years she talked about Floyd of Rosedale, and she kept the articles, and so yeah, maybe it's a legacy to my mom as well in her belief in the Hawkeyes. She would have been very proud to know that, hey, there's a statue commemorating Floyd of Rosedale and all the characters that were associated with it.
Thanks for joining us as we explore the unique stories of our state. I'm Charity Nebbe. See you next time for another episode of Greetings from Iowa.
Funding for Greetings from Iowa is provided by...
With our Iowa roots and Midwestern values, Farmers Mutual Hail is committed to offering innovative farm insurance for America's farmers, just as we have for 6 generations. Farmers Mutual Hail, America's crop insurance company.
The Pella Roll Screen Foundation is a proud supporter of Iowa PBS. Pella Windows and Doors strives to better our communities and build a better tomorrow.